हेलो फ्रेंड्स, 17 नंबर का हमारा चैप्टर है लोकोमोशन एंड मूवमेंट। मूवमेंट इज वन ऑफ द सिग्निफिकेंट फीचर्स ऑफ लिविंग बीइंग्स। Animals and plants exhibit a wide range of movements. Streaming of protoplasm in the cellular organisms like amoeba is a simple form of movement. Movement of cilia, flagella and tentacles are shown by many organisms. Human beings can move limbs, jaws, eyelids, tongue, etc. Some of the movements result in a change of place and location. Such voluntary movements are called locomotion. Walking, running, climbing, flying, swimming are all some forms of locomotory movement. Locomotive structures need not be different from those affecting other types of movements. For example, for paramecium, cilia helps in the movement of food through cytopharynx, and in locomotion as well. Hydra can use its tentacles for capturing its prey and also use them for locomotion. We use the limbs for changes in body postures and locomotion as well. The above observations suggest that movements of and locomotion cannot be studied separately. The two may be linked by stating that all locomotions are movements, but all movements are not locomotions. Methods of locomotion performed by animals vary with their habitats and the demand of the situation. However, locomotion is generally for search of food, shelter made suitable from leading groups, favorable climatic conditions, or to escape from enemies, predators. Types of movement. Cells of the human body exhibit three main types of movements, namely amoeboid, ciliary, and muscular. Some specialized cells in our body, like macrophages and leukocytes in blood, exhibit amoeboid movement. It is affected by pseudopodia formed by the streaming of protoplasm as in amoeba. Cytoskeleton elements like microfilaments are also involved in amoeboid movement. Ciliary movement occurs in most of our internal tubular organs, which are lined by ciliated epithelium. The coordinated movements of cilia in the trachea help us in removing dust particles and some of the foreign substances inhaled along with the atmospheric air. Passage of ova through substances inhaled along with the atmospheric air. Passage of ova through the female reproductive tract is also facilitated by the ciliary movement of our limbs, jaws, tongue, etc. require muscular movement. The contractile property of muscles are effectively used for locomotion and other movements by human beings. And majority of multicellular organisms, locomotion requires a perfect coordinated activity of muscles, muscular, skeletal, and neural systems. In this chapter, you will learn about the types of muscles, their structure, mechanism of their contraction, and important aspects of the skeleton system. Muscle. You have studied in chapter 8 that the cilia and flagella are the outgrowth of the cell membrane. Flagellar movement helps in the swimming of the spermatozoa, maintenance of water current in the canal system of sponges, and in locomotion of protozoans like euglena. Muscle is a specialized tissue of mesodermal tree origin. About 40 to 50% of the body tissue of body weight of human adult is contributed by muscles. They have special properties like excitability, contractility, extensibility, and elasticity. Muscles have been classified using different criteria, namely location, appearance, and nature of regulation of their activities. Based on their location, three types of muscles are identified: skeletal, visceral, and cardiac. Skeletal muscles are closely associated with the skeletal components of the body. They have a stripped appearance under the microscope and hence are called the striated muscles. As their activities are under the voluntary control of the nervous system, they are known as the voluntary muscles too. They are primarily involved in locomotor actions and changes of body postures. Visceral muscles are located in the inner walls of hollow visceral organs of the body, like the alimentary canal, reproductive tract, etc. They do not exhibit any striation and are smooth in appearance. Hence, they are called smooth muscles, non-striated muscles. Their activity are not under the voluntary control of the nervous system and are therefore known as the involuntary muscles. They assist, for example, in the transportation of food through the digestive tract and gametes through the genital tract. As the name suggests, cardiac muscles are the muscles of heart. Many cardiac muscles are assembled in a branching pattern to form a cardiac muscle. Based on appearance, cardiac muscles are striated. Now they are involuntary in nature, as the nervous system does not control their activities directly. Let us examine the skeletal muscle in detail to understand the structure and mechanism of contraction. Each organized skeletal muscle in our body is made of a number of muscle bundles or fascicles held together by common collagenous connective tissue layer called fascia. Each muscle bundle contains a number of muscle fibers. Figure 17.1. Each muscle fiber is lined by the plasma membrane called the sarcoplasma, and enclosing the sarcoplasma. Muscle fiber is a syncytium, as the sarcoplasma contains many nuclei. The endoplasmic reticulum, that is sarcoplasmic reticulum of the muscle fiber, is the storehouse of calcium ions. A characteristic feature of the muscle fiber is the presence of large number of parallelly arranged filaments in the sarcoplasma. In the sarcoplasma, called myofilaments, or detailed study or myofibrils. Each myofibril are alternate dark and light bonds, light and bands on it. A detailed study of myofibril has established that the striated appearance is due to the distribution pattern of two important proteins, actin and myosin. The light bands contain actin and is called I band or isotropic band, whereas the dark band called A and anisotropic and band contains myosin. Both the proteins are arranged as rod-like structures parallel to each other and also to the longitudinal axis of the myofibrils. Actin filaments are thinner as compared to the myosin filaments, hence the commonly called thin and thick filaments, respectively. In the center of each, the I band is an elastic fiber called Z line, which bisects it. The thin filaments are firmly attached to the Z line. The thick filament in the A band are also held together in the middle of this band by thin fibers throughout the length of myofibrils. The portion of the myofibrils between two successive Z lines is considered as the functional unit of contraction and is called sarcomere. Figure 17.2. In a resting state, the edges of thin filaments on either side of the thick filaments partially overlap the free ends of the thick filaments, leaving the central part of the thick filaments This central part of the thick filament, not overlapped by thin filaments, and is called the H zone. Structure of contractile proteins. Each actin thin filament is made of two F filaments. Actin actins helically wound to each other. Each of actin is a polymer of monomeric G globular actins. Two filaments of another proteins, tropomyosin. Tropomyosin also run close to the hair of actins throughout the length. A complex protein, troponin, is distributed at regular intervals of the on the tropomyosin in the resting state. A subunit of troponin masks the active binding sites for myosin on the actin filament. Figure 17.3a. Each myosin thick filament is also a polymerized protein. Many monomeric proteins called meromycin, figure 17.3b, constitute one thick filament. Each meromycin also has two important parts: a globular head with a short arm and a tail, the former being called the heavy meromycin HMM, and later the light meromycin LMM. And HMM component, that is the head and short arm, projects outwards at regular distance and angle formed from each other from the substance from the surface of a polymerized myosin filament, and is known as cross arm. The globular head is an active ATPase enzyme and has binding sites for ATP and active sites for actin. Figure 17.3. An actin filament B. Myosin. Mechanism of muscle contraction is best explained by the silence filament. Now, the theory which states that contraction of muscles fibers takes place by the sliding of the thin filament over the thick filament. Muscle contraction is initiated by a signal sent by the central nervous system CNS via motor neuron. The motor neuron, along with the muscle fibers connected to it, constitute a motor unit. The junction between motor neuron and the sarcolemma of the muscle fiber is called the neuromuscular junction or a motor end plate. A neural signal reaching this junction releases a neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which generates an action potential in the sarcolemma. This spreads through the muscle fiber and causes the release of calcium ions into the sarcoplasma. Increase in calcium ion level leads to the binding of calcium with a subunit of troponin on actin filament, and thereby remove the masking of active sites for myosin. Utilizing the energy from ATP hydrolysis, myosin head now binds through the exposed active sites on actin to form a cross bridge. Figure 17.4. This pulls the attached actin filament towards the center of A band, and the Z line attached to these actins are also pulled inwards, thereby causing a shortening of the sarcomere, that is contraction. It is clear from the above steps that during shortening of the muscle, that is contraction, the I bands get reduced whereas the A band retain the length. Figure 17.5. The myosin releasing the ATP and ADP and P1 goes back to its relaxed state. A new ATP binds and the cross bridge is broken. Figure 17.4. The ATP is again hydrolyzed by the myosin head and then cycle of cross bridge formation. and breakage is repeated, causing further sliding. In the process continuous until the calcium ions are pumped back to the sarcoplasmic cisternae, resulting in the masking of actin filament. This causes the return of Z lines back to their original position, that is relaxation. The reaction time of the fibers can vary in different muscles. Repeated activation of the muscles can lead to the accumulation of lactic acid due to anaerobic breakdown of glycogen in them, causing fatigue. Muscle contains a red colored oxygen storing pigment called myoglobin. Myoglobin content is high in some of the muscles, which gives a reddish appearance. Such muscles are called the red fibers. These muscles also contain plenty of mitochondria, which can utilize a large amount of oxygen stored in them for ATP production. These muscles therefore can also be called aerobic muscles. On the other hand, some of the muscles possess very less quantity of myoglobin and therefore appear pale or whitish. Now, these are the white fibers. Number of mitochondria are also few in them, but the amount of sarcoplasmic reticulum is high. They depend on anaerobic process for energy. Skeletal muscle. Skeletal system. Skeletal system consists of framework of bones and a few cartilaginous. With this system has a significant role in movement shown by the body. Imagine chewing food without jaw bones and walking around without the limb. Bone and cartilage are specialized connective tissues. The former has a very hard matrix due to the calcium salts in it, and latter has slightly pliable matrix due to chondroitin salts in human beings. This system is made up of 206 bones and a few cartilages. It is grouped into the principal divisions: the axial and the appendicular skeleton. The axial skeleton comprises 80 bones distributed along the main axis of the body. The skull, vertebral column, sternum, and ribs constitute the axial skeleton. The skull, figure 17.6, is composed of two sets of bones, cranial and facial, that totals of 22 bones. Cranial bones are 8 in number. Now they form the hard protective outer covering cranium for the brain. The facial region is made up of 14 skeletal elements which form the front part of the skull. A single U-shaped being U-shaped bone called a hyoid is present at the base of the buccal cavity, and it is also included in the skull. Each middle ear contains three tiny bones: malleus, incus, and stapes, collectively called ear ossicles. The skull region articulates with the superior region of the vertebral column with the help of two occipital condyles. Dicondylic skull or vertebral column, figure 17.7, is formed by 27 serially arranged units called vertebrae and is dorsally placed. It extends from the base of the skull and constitutes the main framework of the trunk. Each vertebra has a central hollow portion, neural canal, through which the spinal cord passes. First vertebra is the atlas, and it articulates with the occipital condyles. The vertebral column it differentiates into cervical 7, thoracic 12, luminar 5, sacral have one fused and coccygeal one fused region starting from the skull. The number of cervical vertebrae are 7 in almost all mammals, including human beings. The vertebral column protects the spinal cord, supports the head, and serves as the point of attachment for the ribs and musculature of the back. The sternum is a flat bone on the ventral midline of thorax, and there are 12 pairs of ribs. Each rib is a thin, flat bone connected dorsally to the vertebral column and ventrally to the sternum. It has two articulation surfaces on its dorsal end and is hence called a bicephalic. First seven pairs of the ribs are called true ribs. Dorsally, they are attached to the thoracic vertebrae and ventrally connected to the sternum with the help of hyaline cartilage. Now, the eighth and ninth and tenth pair of ribs do not articulate directly with the sternum but join the seventh rib with the help of the hyaline cartilage. Now, these are called vertebrochondral face of false ribs. Now, last two pairs, 11th and 12th of ribs, are not connected ventrally and are therefore called floating ribs. Thoracic vertebrae, ribs and sternum together form the rib cage. Figure 17.8. The bones of the limbs along with their girders constitute the appendicular skeleton. Each limb is made up of 30 bones. The bones of the hand forelimb are humerus, radius, and ulna. Carpals, wrist bones 8 in number. Metacarpals, palm bones 5 in number, and phalanges, digits 14 in number. Figure 17.9. Femur, thigh bone, and the longest bone, tibia and fibula. Tarsals, ankle bones 7 in number. Metatarsals 5 in number, and phalanges, 4 digits 14 in number, are the bones of the legs. Hind limb. Figure 17.10. Cup shaped bone called patella cover on the knee, ventrally kneecap, pectoral and pelvic girdle. Bones help in the articulation of the upper and the lower limbs respectively with the axial skeleton. Each girdle is formed of two halves. Each half of pectoral girdle consists of clavicle and scapula. Figure 17.9. Scapula is a large triangular flat bone situated in the dorsal part of the thorax between the second and the seventh ribs. The dorsal flat triangular body of scapula has a slightly elevated ridge called the spine, which projects as a flat expanded process called the acromion. The clavicle the articulates with this. Below the acromion is a depression called the glenoid cavity, which articulates with the head of the humerus to form the shoulder joint. Each clavicle is a long, slender bone with two curvatures. This bone is commonly called the collarbone. A pelvic girdle consists of two coxal bones. Figure 17.10. Each coxal bone is formed by the fusion of three bones: ilium, ischium, and pubis. At the point of fusion of the above bones is a cavity called acetabulum, to which the thigh bone articulates. The two halves of the pelvic girdle meet ventrally to form the public symphysis of containing fibrous cartilage. Joints. Joints are essential for all types of movements involving the body. Parts of the body. Locomotory movements are no exception to these. Joints are points of contact between bones or between bones and cartilages. For force generated by the muscles is used to carry out a movement through joint, where the joint acts as a fulcrum. And the movability of these joints are vary depending on different factors. Joints have been classified into three major structural forms, namely fibrous, cartilaginous, and synovial. Fibrous joints Fibrous joints do not allow any movement. This type of joint is shown by the flat skull bones, which fuse end to end with the help of dense fibrous connective tissues in the form of sutures to form the cranium. In cartilaginous joints, the bones involved the joined together with the help of cartilages. The joint between the adjacent vertebrae in the vertebral column is of this pattern, and it permits limited movement. Synovial joints are characterized by the presence of a fluid filled the synovial cavity between the articulating surfaces of the two bones. Such an arrangement allows considerable movement. The joints help in locomotion and many other movements. Ball and socket joint between the humerus and pectoral girdle. Hinge joint, knee joint, pivot joint from between atlas and axis, gliding joint between the carpals, and saddles joint between carpal and metacarpal of thumb are some example. Disorders of muscular and skeletal system. Myasthenia gravis, now autoimmune disorder affecting neuromuscular junction, leading to fatigue, weakening, and paralysis of skeletal muscular dystrophy, progressive degeneration of skeletal muscle, mostly due to genetic disorder, tetany, rapid spasm, the wild contractions in muscle due to low calcium ion in the body fluid, arthritis, inflammation of joints, osteoporosis, age-related disorder characterized by decreased bone mass and increased chances of fractures. Decreased levels of estrogen is a common cause. Gut inflammation of joints due to accumulation of uric acid crystals. Summary. Locomotion and movement. Start करते summary. Movement is an essential feature of all living beings. Protoplasmic streaming, ciliary movements, movements of fins, limbs, wings, etc., are some of forms exhibited by animals. A voluntary movement which causes the animal to change its place is called locomotion. Animals move generally in search of food, shelter, breeding ground, better climate, or to protect themselves. The cells of the human body exhibit amoeboid, ciliary, and muscular movements. Locomotion and many other movements requires coordinated muscular activities, and three types of muscles are present in our body. Skeletal muscles are attached to skeletal elements. They appear striated and are voluntary in nature. Visceral muscles present in the inner walls of the visceral organs are non-striated and involuntary. Cardiac muscles are the muscles of the heart. They are striated, branched, and involuntary. Muscles possess excitability, excitability, contractility, extensibility, and elasticity. Muscle fiber is the anatomical unit of muscle. Each muscle fiber has many parallelly arranged myofibrils. Each myofibril contains many serially arranged units called as sarcomere, which are the functional units. Each sarcomere has the central A band made of thick myosin filaments and two half I bands made of thin actin filaments on the either side of it, marked by Z lines. Actin and myosin are polymerized proteins with contractility. The active sites for myosin are on resting actin filament are masked by the protein troponin. Myosin head contain ATPase and has ATP binding its sites and active sites for actin. The motor neuron carries signal to the muscle fibers. Sarcoplasmic reticulum, calcium ion activates actin, which binds to the myosin head to form a cross bridge. These cross bridges pull the actin filaments, causing them to not slide over myosin filaments and thereby causing contraction. Calcium ion are then returned to sarcoplasmic reticulum, which inactivate the actin. Cross bridges are broken and the muscles relax. Repeated stimulation muscles leads to facilitate. Muscles are classified as red and white fibers based primarily on the amount of red colored myoglobin pigment in them. Bones and cartilages constitute our skeletal system. The skeletal system is divisible into axial and appendicular. Skull, vertebral column, ribs, and sternum constitute the axial skeleton. Lymph, bones, and girdles form on the appendicular skeleton. Three types of joints are formed between bones and between bone are cartilage, fibrous, cartilaginous, and synovial. Synovial joints allow considerable movements of their play a significant role in the locomotion and movement. 17 नंबर का हमारा चैप्टर है लोकोमोशन एंड मूवमेंट. टाइप्स ऑफ मूवमेंट हमने देखा, मसल्स देखा, देन स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ कॉन्ट्रैक्टाइल प्रोटीन्स, मैकेनिज्म ऑफ मसल कॉन्ट्रैक्शन, skeletal system, joints, disorders of muscular and skeletal system, then summary. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share and subscribe.